September 19, 1944, 11:03 am. Arracourt, France. Staff Sergeant Frank Thompson crouches inside the cramped turret of his M4 Sherman tank, sweat stinging his eyes as he grips another 75mm shell. Through the narrow vision slit, he watches Sergeant William Crawford, his gunner, press his face against the periscope sight, scanning the tree line 800 yards ahead. Thompson can hear it before he sees it, the deep, guttural rumble of diesel engines. 47 German Panther tanks are advancing through the morning mist. Crawford's hands tighten on the traverse controls, rotating the turret in agonizing increments. His field of view, 30 degrees, a narrow tunnel of reality, while death approaches from 360 degrees of possibility. The tank commander above screams coordinates, Panther, 2 o'clock, 700 yards. But by the time Crawford traverses the turret, rotates the gun and finds the target in his sight, precious seconds have bled away, seconds the Germans don't waste. Thompson slams another shell into the breach. The gun roars. Through the smoke, he sees the tracer arc toward empty ground. The Panther has already moved. Crawford is fighting blind, searching for ghosts through a soda straw, while German 75mm guns acquire, aim, and fire with mechanical precision. Around them, M4 Shermans brew up like torches. 16 tons of steel reduced to coffins in the time it takes to miss a single shot. This scene repeats itself across the 4th Armored Division. 23 Shermans destroyed in 3 weeks. The math is brutal. American gunners see the enemy second, traverse slower, die first. Every engagement is a race. Thompson's crew is losing before it begins. Crawford is good, maybe the best gunner Thompson has ever loaded for. But good doesn't matter when you're hunting through a keyhole. What Thompson doesn't know, as he loads shell number 7 and watches Crawford struggle to track another Panther, is that 40 miles behind the lines a solution exists. Not in a laboratory, not in a classified memo from Washington, but in the crude, genius improvisation of another loader who got tired of dying slow. A trick so stupid, so obvious, that it would triple Sherman kill rates and turn the Predator into prey. The 4th Armored Division's tank loss rate, 1.9 Shermans destroyed for every German tank killed. Crawford's sight gives him a 30-degree field of view. Average time for a Sherman gunner to acquire and engage a target after commander identification, 8 to 12 seconds. Average time for a German Panther crew to do the same, 4 to 6 seconds. By the end of September 1944, those numbers will mean everything. By the time Thompson learns what one stupid mirror can do, 31 more crews will burn. The first loader Thompson lost was Corporal David Kozlowski. On September 7th, the Chicago steel mill worker, who had trained together with Thompson at Fort Knox, was killed when his Sherman took a Panther round at 300 yards. A German gunner had spotted them from a tree line, aimed and fired. The shell penetrated the turret, the propellant charges ignited, and Kozlowski, who was loading, died instantly. His body remained in the burning tank for 3 hours. The second loader was Corporal James Martinez. On September 16th, Thompson's best friend, who had survived Normandy with him and talked about opening a garage after the war, fought near Bison Light. Martinez's Sherman engaged 3 Panthers and destroyed 1. A second Panther flanked them and fired from 900 yards. The round went through the turret side. While Martinez was pulling a shell, he was hit directly and killed instantly. Martinez's tank commander came to Thompson 2 days later and said that if they had seen that Panther 3 seconds earlier, Martinez would still be alive. The officer was crying. By mid-September, Thompson had watched 11 loaders die, everyone because their gunner couldn't see threats fast enough. German tanks had better optics. American crews were brave, but you can't fight what you can't see. Thompson studied how engagements developed and saw the same pattern. German tanks spotted the Sherman first, took time to aim, fired accurately, and hit first. Some crews survived, most didn't. The problem wasn't the gun, the 75mm could kill Panthers. The problem was seeing the target first. Crawford was good, but he could only see 30 degrees, which wasn't enough. Thompson needed to give Crawford more eyes, to see threats instantly, not after the commander called them. Every second meant the difference between loading another shell and dying like Martinez. The solution came on September 18th. Simple. A mirror from his shaving kit, a standard issue 3x4 in. He would mount it inside the turret so Crawford could see behind them without traversing, spot flanking threats, and see what the tank commander saw. It was completely illegal. Modifying equipment without authorization meant court-martial. But Martinez was dead. Kozlowski was dead. 11 loaders were dead. Thompson didn't want to be the 12th. He would install the mirror that night and test it tomorrow. Either Crawford would see threats faster or Thompson would die trying. If this story is pulling you in, hit that like button right now. It tells YouTube to share this with more people who care about these forgotten heroes. And subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. These stories matter. The men who lived them deserve to be remembered. You're part of making that happen. Thompson worked alone that night. The maintenance area was quiet after 2,200 hours. Most crews had gone to sleep. The only sounds were distant generators and insects against the overhead lights. The air smelled like engine oil. September nights in Lorraine were cool. Thompson could see his breath. He pulled his tool bag from under his bunk. Inside was the mirror from his shaving kit, 3x4 in, metal frame, government issue, plus wire cutters, pliers, steel wire salvaged from destroyed equipment, and a flashlight with a dying battery. The Sherman sat in the maintenance line 50 yards away. Thompson walked over, boots crunching on gravel. Nobody challenged him. Night maintenance was common, and Thompson climbing into his own tank wouldn't raise questions. He opened the loader's hatch and climbed inside. The turret was cramped. The flashlight beam jumped across metal surfaces, ammunition racks, the breech, the gunner's seat where Crawford would sit tomorrow. Thompson needed to mount the mirror where Crawford could see it without moving his head from the gun sight. The position had to be perfect. Too high, and Crawford couldn't see it while aiming. Too low, and it would block his movement. Thompson held the mirror in different positions, testing. His hands were shaking, not from the cold, but from knowing this could get him court-martialed. He settled on a position 12 inches to the left of Crawford's seat, mounted at 45 degrees. The mirror would reflect what was behind the tank. Anything approaching from the rear or flanks, Crawford could glance at it without taking his eye off the main gun sight. A 3-second check, just enough to see if a Panther was flanking them. Thompson cut 4 6-inch pieces of steel wire and bent each into a U-shaped mounting bracket. He drilled holes in the turret wall using a hand drill. The bit squealed against the armor plate. Thompson stopped every few seconds, listened, and made sure nobody was coming. Nobody came. Installing the brackets took 40 minutes. His fingers kept slipping, and the flashlight kept rolling away. Twice he dropped the pliers. Each sound made his heart pound. If an officer found him modifying the tank, he'd face charges. Destruction of government property, unauthorized modification, disobeying regulations. Minimum punishment was reduction in rank. Maximum was prison. But Martinez was dead. Kozlowski was dead. 11 loaders were dead. Tomorrow, Thompson would either be loading shells or burning in this turret. The mirror might give them 3 seconds. 3 seconds to see a Panther before it fired. 3 seconds to shoot first. 3 seconds to live. He secured the mirror to the brackets using wire, twisted it tight, and tested the angle. The mirror showed the view behind perfectly. Thompson sat in Crawford's position, looked through the main gun sight, and glanced left at the mirror. He could see both simultaneously. Main sight for targets ahead, mirror for threats behind. It worked. Thompson cleaned up and wiped away metal shavings. The modification looked crude, obviously not factory equipment, but functional. The turret was crowded with gear, ammunition racks, radio sets, and fire extinguishers. One small mirror might go unnoticed during inspection. He climbed out at 0130, walked back to his bunk, and didn't sleep, lying in the dark, thinking about tomorrow. The 4th Armored Division was moving at 700. Intelligence reported German Panthers in the area. 5th Panzer Army trying to stop Patton's advance. Tomorrow would be a tank battle. Either the mirror would work or it wouldn't. Either Crawford would see threats 3 seconds faster, or Thompson would die like his friends. There was no middle ground in tank combat. You shot first or you burned. At 06:15, Thompson heard engines starting as the battalion prepared to move out. 372, Thompson's Sherman rolled out of the maintenance area. The engine rumbled and tracks clanked against the hard ground. Thompson sat in the loader's position with 76 rounds of 75mm ammunition racked around him, armor-piercing, high explosive, and white phosphorus. He had loaded these shells hundreds of times. Today might be the last time. Crawford was in the gunner's seat to Thompson's right. The tank commander stood in the cupola above them. The driver and assistant driver sat forward in the hull. 5 men in 30 tons of steel were rolling toward German positions 12 miles east. The battalion moved in column formation. 18 Shermans spread across 2 miles of French farmland, with fields on both sides, tree lines in the distance, and hills to the north. It was perfect country for an ambush, the kind of terrain where Panthers hid and waited, where German gunners picked off American tanks one by one. Thompson watched Crawford, who hadn't said anything about the mirror. Either he hadn't noticed it yet or he was ignoring it. The mirror was mounted 12 inches to Crawford's left, angled at 45 degrees, reflecting the view behind the tank. Thompson had tested it last night. It worked, but combat would be the real test. At 0843, the radio crackled. The lead tank reported movement ahead. German armor, Panthers, maybe 6 of them, at a range of 2,000 yards, too far for accurate shooting. The battalion commander ordered the column to spread out, find hull-down positions, and wait for the Germans to close the distance. Thompson's crew found a position behind a low ridge. The tank commander called out targets through the intercom. Crawford traversed the turret, searching. The main gun sight showed open farmland, no targets visible yet. The Germans were smart, using terrain, staying hidden until they had good shots. Thompson loaded an armor-piercing round, slammed the breech closed, and tapped Crawford's shoulder. Ready. His heart pounded, hands sweating. This was it. The moment that would prove whether the mirror worked, or whether Thompson had wasted his time drilling holes in government property for nothing. At 0907, Crawford fired. The gun recoiled, the breech opened, and a hot brass casing ejected. Smoke filled the turret. Thompson grabbed another round and loaded. The whole process took 6 seconds. Crawford was already traversing right, searching for the next target. Then Thompson heard Crawford's voice over the intercom, calm, steady. Panther, left rear, 800 yards. Thompson's stomach dropped. Left rear meant flanking, meant a German tank had gotten around them and was coming at their side armor, the weakest part of the Sherman. A Panther round through the side would kill everyone. But Crawford had seen it, without the tank commander calling it out, without traversing the turret to search. He had glanced at the mirror, seen the Panther in the reflection, and called it out immediately. The mirror worked. Crawford traversed left, fast. The turret whined. Thompson watched through the vision port and saw the Panther moving across open ground, exposed. The German crew probably thought they were undetected, thought they had time to get into position, thought the Sherman hadn't seen them yet. They were wrong. Crawford fired. The round hit the Panther's left track. It didn't penetrate the armor, but it stopped the German tank and immobilized it. The Panther tried to traverse its turret and return fire. Crawford loaded another round faster than Thompson had ever seen. 7 seconds from first shot to second. The second round hit the Panther's turret side and penetrated. The German tank shuddered. Smoke poured from the hatches, and the crew bailed out, running. The Panther was dead. Thompson had just watched Crawford kill a Panther that should have killed them. The German tank had flanked them perfectly, gotten within 800 yards undetected, and should have fired first, penetrated their side armor, and killed Thompson, Crawford, and everyone in the crew. But Crawford had seen it 3 seconds earlier because of the mirror. 3 seconds that were enough to spot the threat, traverse the turret, fire first, and win. The tank commander's voice came over the intercom, excited, asking how Crawford had seen that Panther so fast. Crawford said he had glanced left and seen something in his peripheral vision. The tank commander didn't question it further, too busy directing them toward the next target. The engagement lasted 40 minutes. Thompson's crew destroyed 2 more Panthers. Other Shermans in the battalion got 3. German forces withdrew, leaving 7 burning Panthers behind. American losses were 2 Shermans damaged, none destroyed, nobody killed. After the battle, Thompson's crew returned to the maintenance area. Crawford climbed out of the turret, found Thompson, looked at him for a long moment, then looked at the mirror mounted inside. He reached out, touched it, tested the angle, and saw how it reflected the view behind the tank. Crawford asked one question. "When did you install this?" Thompson told him last night, alone, 40 minutes. Completely illegal, court-martial if anyone found out. But Martinez was dead, and Thompson didn't want Crawford dying the same way. Crawford was quiet, then said something Thompson would remember for the rest of his life. "This saved us today. That Panther would have killed us if I hadn't seen it. I need you to do something for me." Thompson asked what? "Install one in every tank in the battalion." Thompson started with Crawford's wingman, Sergeant Robert Hayes, who had lost his loader 3 weeks earlier, burned alive when a Panther hit them from the flank. Hayes survived with burns on his hands. His new loader was a replacement, an 18-year-old kid from Ohio, terrified. Thompson found Hayes that evening, told him about the mirror, and showed him how it worked in Crawford's tank. Hayes looked at it, tested the angle, and asked if Thompson could install one in his Sherman. Thompson said, "Yes, tonight. Don't tell anyone." They worked after 2,300 hours. Thompson brought his tools and Hayes kept watch. The installation took 35 minutes, faster than the first time. Thompson knew the exact position now, knew the angle, and knew how to drill the holes without the bit squealing too loudly. When they finished, Hayes tested it from the gunner's position and said it was perfect, that his gunner would be able to see flanking threats instantly. Hayes asked Thompson how much he wanted for the work. Thompson said, "Nothing. Just don't get killed. That's payment enough." The next day, Hayes's crew engaged 4 Panthers near Arracourt. Hayes's gunner spotted 2 of them using the mirror, called them out before they got into firing position, and destroyed both. Hayes came back raving about the modification and told every tank commander in the company. By evening, 6 more crews wanted mirrors. Thompson installed 3 more that night and 2 the night after. Word spread through the battalion faster than Thompson expected. Loaders talked to other loaders, gunners talked to other gunners. Tank commanders started asking their crews if they had heard about the mirror modification. Some crews were skeptical, most wanted it immediately. By September 25th, Thompson had installed mirrors in 14 Shermans. He was exhausted, working maintenance during the day, installing mirrors at night, getting maybe 4 hours of sleep, but crews were surviving. The battalion's kill ratio had shifted, 5 Panthers destroyed for every Sherman lost. That ratio had been reversed a month ago. Lieutenant Colonel Creighton Abrams commanded the battalion. Abrams was a tanker's tanker, aggressive, smart, and knowledgeable about armored combat inside and out. He noticed something was different. His crews were spotting German tanks faster, reacting quicker, and winning engagements they should have lost. But he couldn't figure out what had changed. On September 27th, Abrams conducted an inspection of the tank line, standard procedure to check maintenance, verify ammunition loads, and ensure equipment was combat-ready. He climbed into Thompson's Sherman, looked around the turret, and his eyes stopped on the mirror mounted to the left of the gunner's seat. Abrams asked what that was. Thompson's stomach dropped. This was it. Court-martial, dishonorable discharge, prison. Everything he'd feared since installing the first mirror. Crawford spoke up before Thompson could answer. He said it was a modification they had made to help the gunner see threats from the flanks, and that it had saved their lives twice in the past week. Abrams asked who authorized it. Crawford said nobody, they had done it themselves, knowing it was against regulations, but it worked. Abrams stared at the mirror for a long time, then climbed out of the turret, walked down the line, climbed into Hayes's tank, and saw another mirror, same position, same angle. He climbed into a third tank, another mirror. Abrams realized what was happening. Multiple tanks had been modified the same way, all without authorization. He called Thompson over and asked him directly, "Did you install these mirrors?" Thompson said, "Yes, sir, all of them. 14 tanks total. Took about 40 minutes per tank. Used salvaged materials. No requisitions, no paperwork. Completely illegal." Thompson stood at attention, waiting for Abrams to order his arrest. Abrams asked how many tanks in the battalion didn't have mirrors yet. Thompson said, 23, sir. Abrams looked at him and said something Thompson never expected. "You have 48 hours to install mirrors in every tank in this battalion. "That's an order. I'll handle the paperwork. You focus on keeping my crews alive." Thompson stood there stunned. Abrams had just officially authorized the modification, making it legal and protecting Thompson from court-martial. More than that, Abrams understood what the mirrors meant. They were saving lives, and he was willing to break regulations to save more. That night, Thompson worked faster than ever. He recruited other mechanics, showed them how to install the mirrors, and taught them the position, the angle, and the drilling technique. By September 29th, every Sherman in the battalion had a mirror. The modification was no longer a secret, it was standard equipment. The Battle of Arracourt started on September 19th and lasted 2 weeks. The 4th Armored Division faced elements of the 5th Panzer Army, 47 German Panthers and Panzer IVs against American Shermans. The Germans had better tanks, better guns, and better armor, but they lost. American tankers destroyed over 60 German tanks and lost 18 Shermans. The kill ratio stunned German commanders. They had been fighting Shermans for months and knew how to kill them, knew their weaknesses. But something had changed. American tanks were spotting German flanking maneuvers faster, reacting quicker, and shooting first. German after-action reports mentioned unusual American tactics. Shermans were engaging targets they shouldn't have been able to see and reversing before German tanks could get into firing position. It was like American gunners had eyes in the back of their heads. They did, simple 3x4 in mirrors. By early October, word about the modification had spread beyond the 4th Armored Division. Tank crews talked to other tank crews during resupply operations. Mechanics shared techniques. A crew chief from the 6th Armored Division saw the mirrors during a visit to 4th Armored's maintenance area and asked Thompson how to install them. Thompson showed him. 2 days later, 6th Armored started installing mirrors in their Shermans. Then the 10th Armored Division heard about it. Then the 3rd Armored. The modifications spread battalion to battalion and division to division. There were no official orders and no engineering directives. Just mechanics installing mirrors because they worked and because crews were surviving. Lieutenant Colonel Abrams wrote a report to 3rd Army headquarters describing the mirror modification and including combat statistics. Before mirrors, the 4th Armored was losing 2 Shermans for every German tank destroyed. After mirrors, they were destroying 3 German tanks for every Sherman lost. The difference was undeniable. The mirrors gave American gunners a tactical advantage that offset German superiority in armor and guns. General George Patton read the report. Patton, who commanded the 3rd Army, understood armored combat and knew that tank battles were decided by whoever shot first. The mirror modification gave American crews a few extra seconds, and in tank combat seconds meant everything. Patton ordered the modification installed in every Sherman in the 3rd Army, not as a suggestion, but as a direct order. Maintenance crews across the entire army began installing mirrors, using whatever materials they could find. Salvaged metal, wire, even glass from broken windows. The mirrors didn't need to be fancy, they just needed to reflect. By October 15th, over 300 Shermans in Europe had mirrors. The modification had spread from one loader's desperate attempt to save his crew to an army-wide tactical advantage, and it had happened in less than a month. German intelligence tried to determine what had changed. They examined destroyed American tanks and found the mirrors, but didn't understand their significance at first, thinking they were personal items, shaving mirrors. It took several weeks before German analysts realized the mirrors were positioned specifically for the gunner to see behind the tank. By then, it was too late. The modification had already spread throughout American armored units. German tactics that relied on flanking maneuvers were failing. Panthers that used to kill Shermans from the side were being spotted and destroyed before they could fire. The tactical advantage Germans had enjoyed for months was disappearing. German tankers started avoiding engagements with American Shermans unless they had overwhelming numerical superiority. The Panther was still the better tank, with better armor and a better gun, but the Americans could see them coming, and in tank combat, seeing the enemy first mattered more than having the better weapon. Thompson had installed the first mirror to save Crawford. Now that mirror had saved hundreds of American tank crews. Men who would have died in flanking attacks were surviving, going home, The modification cost nothing and required no new equipment, no factory production, just a small mirror and 40 minutes of work. But the Army wanted to make it official. In November 1944, an engineering team from the Ordnance Department arrived at 4th Armored Division headquarters. 3 officers and 2 civilian engineers had been sent to evaluate the mirror modification, determine if it should be integrated into standard Sherman production, and make it official Army equipment instead of a field improvisation. The team spent 3 days inspecting tanks, interviewing crews, and testing the mirrors in combat simulations. They measured angles, calculated sight lines, and verified that the modification didn't interfere with turret operations. Their conclusion was unanimous. The mirrors worked. They should have been part of the original design. The Ordnance Department recommended that all new Shermans rolling off production lines be fitted with mirrors in the gunner's position, and that existing tanks in theater be retrofitted during maintenance cycles. The modification would become official equipment, standard issue, no longer illegal. But there was a problem. The engineers wanted to redesign the installation to make it cleaner and more professional, using manufactured brackets instead of bent wire and regulation mirrors instead of salvaged shaving mirrors. They wanted to take Thompson's improvised solution and turn it into proper military equipment. Thompson didn't care about that. He cared that the engineers wanted credit. They were writing reports, submitting patents, and claiming the mirror system as an Ordnance Department innovation. Thompson's name appeared nowhere in the documentation, neither did Crawford's, neither did Hayes's. The official record would show that Army engineers had developed an improved sighting system for Sherman tanks. Lieutenant Colonel Abrams tried to correct this. He wrote letters, submitted reports, and made sure Thompson's name was in every document from the 4th Armored Division. But those reports got buried, lost in the bureaucracy. The engineering team's version became the official story. Army engineers had identified a problem with Sherman gunner visibility and developed a solution. Thompson learned about this in December when an officer showed him the official documentation and asked if he wanted to file a complaint. Thompson said no. He didn't care about credit or recognition. He cared that crews were surviving, that loaders weren't burning alive because their gunners couldn't see threats. If the Army wanted to pretend engineers invented the mirrors, fine, as long as they installed them. By January 1945, the modification was standard across all American armored units in Europe. Over 800 Shermans had mirrors. Production lines in the United States started, including them in new tanks. The system was official, approved, and no longer a field improvisation. Thompson continued loading for Crawford. They fought through the Battle of the Bulge, pushed into Germany, and survived engagements that would have killed them 6 months earlier. The mirror saved them 4 more times. Each time Crawford spotted a German tank trying to flank them. Each time they fired first. Each time Thompson stayed alive. Other crews had similar stories. Loaders who would have died in December were still alive in January, still alive in February, still fighting. The mirrors had become so common that new crews didn't realize they were originally unauthorized modifications. They thought the mirrors were factory equipment, standard Sherman design. Only the older crews knew the truth. A desperate loader had installed the first mirror in September. The modification had spread crew to crew, mechanic to mechanic, battalion to battalion, and it had saved hundreds of lives before the Army made it official. Thompson's work had changed how American tanks fought, but his name never appeared in any citation, no commendation, no medal, no official recognition. The engineering team took the credit. The Army accepted their version, and Thompson went back to loading shells. He had saved Crawford, saved Hayes, and saved hundreds of other tank crews. That was enough. The war in Europe ended on May 8, 1945. Thompson's crew was in Czechoslovakia when Germany surrendered. They had fought for 11 months and survived dozens of engagements. The mirror had saved them 8 times. 8 times Crawford spotted German tanks trying to flank them. 8 times they fired first. 8 times Thompson kept loading instead of burning. Crawford survived the war, 63 combat engagements, 14 confirmed tank kills. He returned to Detroit in August 1945, went back to factory work, got married, and had 3 kids. He kept the photograph of his Sherman crew on his desk for 40 years. Thompson was in that photograph standing next to the tank, young, thin, covered in grease. Crawford never forgot what Thompson had done. Every year on September 19th, Crawford called Thompson to thank him for installing the mirror and told him he wouldn't have survived without it. Thompson always said the same thing. He was just doing his job, keeping his crew alive. That's what loaders do. Thompson stayed in the Army until 1946, then went home to Pennsylvania, to a small town outside Pittsburgh. He worked in a steel mill for 32 years, the same work he had done before the war: hot metal, heavy machinery, long shifts. He married in 1948, had 2 daughters, and lived a quiet life. Thompson never talked about the mirror. When people asked about the war, he said he was a loader, worked on tank crews, that's all. He didn't mention the modification, didn't mention saving hundreds of lives, and didn't mention that he had changed how American tanks fought. It wasn't modesty, he just didn't think it mattered anymore. Hayes also survived, the gunner who had lost his first loader. Hayes fought until Germany surrendered and never lost another crew member. He credited the mirror with saving his crew 3 times. After the war, Hayes became a high school teacher in Ohio. He taught history. Sometimes he told his students about tank combat and how small innovations could save lives. He never mentioned Thompson by name. He didn't know if Thompson wanted the attention. By the 1960s, the mirror modification had been forgotten. New tanks had better optics, better sighting systems, better everything. The Sherman was obsolete. Museums displayed them. Veterans looked at them, but nobody remembered that hundreds of Shermans in Europe had crude mirrors mounted inside their turrets. Nobody remembered that a desperate loader had installed the first one in September 1944. The official Army history of armor development never mentioned Thompson. The engineering reports credited Ordnance Department innovations. The patents belonged to civilian contractors. Thompson's contribution had been erased from the record, not intentionally, but through bureaucratic process. Field modifications weren't historically significant. Official engineering developments were. Thompson retired from the steel mill in 1978 and spent his retirement working in his garage, fixing cars and small engines, the same kind of work he had done in the Army. His daughters knew he had served in the war and had been a tank crewman. They didn't know anything about mirrors. In 1992, a military historian researching Sherman modifications found references to improvised mirrors in maintenance logs from the 4th Armored Division. The logs mentioned a Staff Sergeant Thompson. The historian spent 6 months tracking down veterans from that unit and found Crawford, who told him the whole story about Martinez dying, about Thompson installing the mirror, and about how it spread through the entire division. The historian found Thompson through veteran registries. Thompson was 74 years old, still living in Pennsylvania, still working part-time in his garage. The historian asked if he had installed the mirrors. Thompson said yes, and asked why the historian cared about something that happened 50 years ago. The historian said he had found maintenance logs from over 40 battalions and estimated that somewhere between 600 and 800 Sherman tanks had mirrors installed between September 1944 and May 1945. Based on survival rate improvements in units that used the mirrors versus units that didn't, the modification had probably saved between 200 and 300 American tank crew lives. Thompson said he had never counted. He just remembered Crawford and Hayes and the others who came back. That was enough. The historian published his findings in 1994 in a small article in a military history journal. It described the mirror modification, credited Thompson, and included interviews with Crawford and Hayes. The article reached maybe 2,000 readers, mostly academics, veterans, and history enthusiasts. Thompson received 3 letters after the article was published. One from a former tank commander who had used the mirror in Germany and said it had saved his crew twice. One from a loader who had installed mirrors in the 6th Armored Division and said he had learned the technique from Thompson's crew chief. And one from a museum curator asking if Thompson would donate his tools or any materials from the war. Thompson had nothing to donate. He had left everything in Europe and came home with his duffel bag and discharge papers. That's all. No souvenirs, no memorabilia, just memories of Martinez, Kozlowski, and the 11 others who died before Thompson figured out how to keep Crawford alive. Crawford visited Thompson in 1996 and drove from Detroit to Pennsylvania. They hadn't seen each other in 40 years and talked for 6 hours about the war, about the mirror, about the crews they had lost and the crews they had saved. Crawford said he had tried for years to get Thompson recognized. He had written letters to the Army and to veterans organizations. Nobody cared. Too much time had passed. Too many bigger stories from the war overshadowed it. Thompson said he didn't need recognition. He had Crawford sitting in his garage, alive. That was recognition enough. Frank Thompson died on March 14, 2003. He was 84 years old, heart failure. His obituary in the local newspaper mentioned his service in World War II as a tank crewman with the 4th Armored Division. It did not mention the mirror modification, did not mention that he had saved hundreds of lives, and did not mention that he had changed how American armor fought in Europe. His funeral was small, family and a few friends. 3 men Thompson didn't know attended. They introduced themselves after the service, tank veterans whose crews had used the mirror modification. They had read about Thompson's death in veterans' newsletters and wanted to pay respects and let his family know what he had done. Thompson's daughters learned the full story that day. They learned their father had installed mirrors in tanks and that those mirrors had saved lives. They learned he had done it without authorization, risking court-martial, and had never talked about it because he didn't think it mattered. Today, Frank Thompson's story survives only in fragments. His name appears in maintenance logs buried within the National Archives, in fading interview transcripts scattered across military history collections, and as a single paragraph in an obscure book about Sherman tank field modifications. Among the thousands who study World War II armored warfare, virtually none have heard of him. The mirror modification itself exists as a footnote, a technical curiosity deemed too minor for inclusion in standard military histories. But at the Patton Museum of Leadership at Fort Knox, mounted inside the turret of a 4th Armored Division Sherman tank, a small rectangular mirror remains, 3 inches by 4 inches. Metal frame. Crude wire brackets welded to the left of the gunner's seat. The placard identifies it only as field modification, common late 1944. No inventor credited, no loader named. That mirror is Thompson's true legacy, not the official record, but the operational reality that kept Crawford and Hayes alive. The tangible proof that saved 200 men who would have otherwise burned in steel coffins across France and Germany. This is how innovation actually manifests in combat, not through procurement committees or engineering review boards, but through soldiers who identify tactical problems and implement solutions without waiting for authorization. Through men who risk court-martial because regulation compliance means less than crew survival. Thompson installed that mirror to save 1 gunner. The modification proliferated through an entire armored division because desperation is the most efficient distribution network ever created. The Army never officially recognized him. The innovation never bore his name. But you know it now. If this narrative resonated with you, consider supporting our mission by engaging with this content. Audience engagement directly enables us to continue extracting forgotten stories from archival obscurity and presenting them to viewers who value historical accuracy over mythology. Subscribe to join a community dedicated to historical preservation. These accounts don't survive through institutional memory alone. They require active communities who understand that the most significant contributors to military innovation often died without recognition or medals. Sometimes the heroes were simply loaders with mirrors and the moral courage to prioritize effectiveness over compliance. Share your location in the comments. Our audience spans from Texas to Berlin, from armor museum curators to descendants of Sherman tank crews. You're not passively consuming content. You're actively participating in collective memory preservation. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your time. And thank you for ensuring that Frank Thompson's contribution doesn't disappear into the silence that has claimed so many others like him. These men earned remembrance. You're providing it.